the Infiniti QX70 Ultimate, the Ultimate Edition, a small facelift here of this full-size SUV. We'll tell you everything in exterior, interior and the driving experience. Today here on Autogefühl, your #1 resource for in-depth car reviews and your #1 community to discuss cars with Thomas. We're going to fill you in with all of the details, driving also Autobahn, city and so on, tell you everything about the changes here and especially this Ultimate version. This is surely a unique SUV, you can already see it from the outside. And now especially in full screen, full HD and full length. Let's go! What a spectacular exterior for an SUV. Usually I'm more a fan of very little design lines and a classic setup from the design, not so much playing around with it. But here this SUV somehow has something unique, definitely. And it's so unusual if you compare it to other stylings. For example, straight line on the top here, the headline's then round shapes on the lower part. The Ultimate version features a dark front grille with horizontal lines, very strong. Those daylights here in the lower part and a very strong lower bumper in this dark chrome or silver chrome, or maybe grey chrome, let's call it that way. This is a special feature for this Ultimate top version. 4 meters 86 or 16 foot total length of this vehicle, and you can also see this very unique side profile. It looks like it would be a sports car put higher, and it's not totally wrong because this one, you cannot imagine it, sits on the same platform than the Nissan 370Z, not X, Z. So, and this is, the Nissan sports car, a relatively small one. You cannot really imagine it, but it is true actually. And special for the Ultimate versions are those fake air outtakes. Sometimes those ones are used that there's a gap on the inside here and then the airflow, the stream, is directed outside here to have a better wind resistance. In this case it's just fake. 21-inch rims, huge, huge. You know from which idiot this comes from. And then this has this turbine style, very interesting, B-color scheme and a little bit twisted inside. Very beautiful, and be careful not to damage it, but I will show you a trick in the infotainment system where you can use the camera system. This one special for the Ultimate version, then black contrast here at the side mirrors, chrome around the windows and again a chrome contrast at the lower part. This defines this Ultimate version. Overall this vehicle is from 2009, relatively old. We will also see it on the inside. 2012 was one facelift, and then now the last update with the Ultimate version, also in the black roof rails right there. And you see the sports car design at the rear here. And overall again, I think it's maybe a love or hate car, and something, I really like the design. At the first time I saw it, I thought, what is this? But then you get used to it and say, this is something unique. What do you think, guys? And the QX70 also features this very unusual rear. And we're gonna have a mix of styling compartments. This is 3D effect at the tail lights, then again a round shape right here. And the Ultimate version features again this dark chrome contrast right there with a huge diffuser and two. Wow, that's big. Big exhaust pipes. And well, the last part is a little bit bigger than the very inside part, where they're not really fake. And you will also, or maybe also have heard from our outside shots, that they are not really fake. This is old school stuff. And talking about the rear, the all-wheel drive system has a rear wheel bias. But then again, they can adapt a little bit up to a split of 50-50 when you need more torque in the front. This is a Nissan Infiniti key. Yeah, you know what I mean. Then you can press here for the keyless entry, and again it's a Nissan door handle. That's again, I think it would be better if they showed less Nissan here. Door closing sound is quite okay, and the beeping sound because the ignition is still on. Then inside of the doors we got those contrast stitches right here, and most of the material is really softened up, so a cozy atmosphere. Just here is hard plastic, real metal is used right there. Then the memory functions for the seat. I got 2 drivers in the memory here right now, good function. Limited space on the inside here. Then the first look into the cockpit. It's a sporty atmosphere, everything is dark, more suited around the driver and not too much space of impression, but you will have enough space of course. But that proves again the point, this is more thought of, okay, we put a sport car a little bit higher. The steering wheel is really known also from a Nissan 370Z. Doesn't fit the car that well, I have to say. The seats in general, that is, they offer you good comfort and also good side support. Also nice work with the contrast stitches, the manual enlengthment of the seating area. But unfortunately, I've just found animal skin options. I haven't found any other options. Maybe you can help me with that, because I've seen a picture once with Alcantara on the inside, but I did not find it on the US or the German configurator. Not sure, but they have to offer more options, especially also in the higher trim levels there. Then let's get inside. A high SUV, comfortable seating position, command view as it should be. And you can have the electric controls of the seat, front up, rear part up. Then here also electric lumbar support and so on. The steering wheel can also be adjusted electronically. And the best thing is, first of all, the memory function. I've set now my memory function, that my seating position is remembered. And what's also good, always when you here turn off the ignition, that's to get out of the car easier. The CES. It's always when the door is open, it's arguing. And you see when I'm putting on the ignition again, then seat goes in the front, and also the steering wheel, depending on how you have adjusted it. I have it on a maximum height level, but that's a really good entry help here, definitely. And well, there's not too much space above my head. I'm 1.86 m or 6'1", and it gets really close here, especially with this glass roof that's opened at the moment. But still, with 190 or 6'2", that still work. Above that, there's a problem. Other than that, you have way enough space, and again, a very cozy feeling in this sporty cockpit in an SUV. Cockpit overview, a lot of sensual lines, round shapes like here. Also a soft plastic touch on the top of the dashboard, like that. As for the build quality, some of the buttons are created in an old school manner. However, also here, for example, for the central small digital display, it's not too new. The car is not new at all. And also in this latest facelift, not so much has been done here, but you know what you get, and people are used to the car, and you know where all of the basic functions are. Very conservative cockpit layout, and the round shapes also fit to the exterior basically. Big car, tiny glove box. Beverage holders are hidden here with an adaptive function for huge bottles. Then this middle armrest. See here, quality-wise, they could also step up the game a little bit. 2 split. Here there's a second in between, and this is, by the way, falling down smoothly. And why is that? There's a damper inside here, and actually here, there is a special damper, and that thing here makes the middle part polygon smoothly. Nice. Then 12-volt power supply. Also here we got, I think it wasn't included in the old version, there's finally a USB port here. And audio connection with 3 ports. I'm not sure who is using that. Lower middle console, let's start right here. This is here to cool, 3 levels, or to heat the seats, also 3 levels for driver and co-driver. Then snow mode and sport mode for the suspension. We will tell you more about that when we drive the car. Then this is the driving stick. You just pull it behind. That's it. Pretty easy solution. Then in front 12-volt power supply, and really for smokers, and well, I would just use it maybe as an additional storage space right there. The AC unit, it's a little downside here because those buttons here, also the one above, they're from cheap, very soft rubber that will look very bad over the time. It also doesn't feel that well. Turning AC on and off, plus minus in the vents and so on. Then we got this analog clock right here as a nice design element. Here again the cheap stuff right here for the volume control. CD slot still available and some radio commands. You could maybe save the one or other button here. And then the main control command is up here. You can also control the touch screen via touch, but you can also use this one here, for example, to change the sound modes for Bluetooth streaming or radio. Then you control everything also here and press enter or go left and so on in the GPS map, and have some shortcuts for all the menus. So this you might use as a driver when you don't want to use a touchscreen while driving, for example. And here is the map. Well, it's a standard infotainment system, nothing too fancy. And I often really use the buttons, not necessarily the touchscreen format. Yeah, you see that doesn't work that well. You can also control it like this to browse in the map. What is good that we always have a separate button for the camera, for example. The resolution is not the best one, definitely not. It's rather blurry, but the system itself is great because it's immediately there always, and when you press it, you can also look to the front, like here when I'm going in the basement garage. Also the fake drone view from above to all of the sides. This is a little bit strange now looking to the sky because the rear hatch is opened, but interesting still. And also the wheels are turning, so you can very well control this huge car, and if you put the reverse gear in, then it will change to the reverse mode. And you see how fast it always gets activated. Here also, by the way, for day and night, for the screen brightness. Then, for example, what else can we show you with the settings? The menu works quite fast. That's still okay. You can also turn this knob here. That works as well. Connecting your phone would be via Bluetooth, like this. If you press the telephone button, then you connect. But it's a little bit weird because if you want to have it for Bluetooth audio streaming, you have to connect it twice. That's really annoying. And direct smartphone connectivity is not available. Now it's failed because I have my phone on flight mode at the moment. Yeah, so overall, it does the basic jobs, but also not a fancy system here, by the way. I can also show you that it also works via touch inside the menus, for example. Let's go back. There's always a back button here, for example, information. Let's see, tire pressure, for example. Here, such thing you can also check right here in this screen. But that's it for the basic overview there. Instruments, left side RPM, right side speed, and those illuminations I find quite neat. The middle screen is rather old school. You can control it right at the dashboard and see this huge consumption. Also time and kilometers you went. There's a total range of 470-80 kilometers left now. We haven't used too much fuel yet here. Overall, rather an old school setup. Small glass roof. I can also show you how it looks like closed, and if it gets too hot, then you can also close this shade, and then everything is dark in here. What about the rear seats? And by the way, I've left the ignition on, so the seat is not falling towards the rear again, so we have the same setup as I would be driving. So, it's a long car. Does it also offer enough of space? Yeah, I mean, it's okay as for the leg room, but we have also some shorter cars that offer more space. So the package is here okay, but not the best we've seen in segment. Headroom wise, the ceiling is raised in the lower part again a little bit, and that's really okay. And you have also a cozy position here in the rear, so can't moan about that. The rear seats can also be adjusted in the angle. I can also sit more upright, so you have a lot of flexibility there, or you can put them more back for a sleeping position. 1990s air vents here in the rear and a 12-volt power supply socket. And obviously this is really thought to be a smoker's car, I don't know. Then you can also pull down the middle part here for more beverage holders, and there's also another case here for the drivers in the rear. And you can, for example, also totally flip that rear bench in a 1/3, 2/3 split there, and we'll take a closer look at that from the trunk. Then the electric hatch takes its time. There it is. Huge cover here for the hinge. Nice quality cover right there. However, the whole trunk cover itself is a little bit weird. You can fold it like this and then up, and that's it. And the other thing you can just do is totally remove it, and then that's it. Strange system. Then you can also release the seats from here. One is already released, so I do it on the right side like this, and that's a good function. So you got a lot of flexibility right there. You can also load through longer things. So I'm satisfied with that. But you see, the height of the loading area is really limited. One reason is that we get a full replacement tire beneath it. But in general, the loading area of such a huge vehicle should be a little bit higher in general. And what about that engine? 3.7 liter V6. Big and still very warm. 6.8 seconds, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, 0 to 60 miles an hour. So very good performance, no doubt about that. 320 horsepower. What else is available? For example, in Germany or in Europe in general, you get a 3 liter V6 diesel. We've tested that one earlier. The consumption is way lower. That's a big thing about, you can drive that with 8-9 liters. This one here at least 13 liters on 100 kilometers. And talking about that when we drive the car in the city, even way higher. So the consumption is the biggest problem with the engine. Sound is no problem with that one, that's good. And there used to be also a 5 liter V8 available. And that one I think is not available anymore. I couldn't find it in the US configurator, for example, anymore. In Germany, it says you can still buy that one, but hardly anyone does. Most people go in Europe, for the diesel. However, this one here, the one good advantage is it's still naturally aspirated. And prices, Germany it starts about 50,000, and here for the ultimate version about 65,000 euros, and also 60,000 euros would be a high trim spec QX70 in the US. And that's a big advantage if you compare the German competitors, because, thinking about the Audi, BMW and Mercedes in their full-size SUV class, they're really more expensive, because with this one here, you get everything from the equipment already from the standard equipment. You don't have to order so much extra, and therefore this one will also be a little bit cheaper always. So guys, you have joined the driving party as well. Glad you did that. Starting at the red traffic light. Turning indicator sound is pretty standard. But what is not standard is the engine sound, because here, as I've told you earlier, we've got still the naturally aspirated engine, 3.7 liters, V6, 320 horsepower, 6.8 seconds, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, or 0 to 60 miles an hour. And you will hear that when we accelerate here from the traffic light, like this. That's still the old school stuff. Meep, meep, meep. What does meep, meep, meep mean? That means pretty close to the vehicle in front of me. That's one of the assistance system. And that's one thing we'll explain you here, assistance systems, and we'll tell you everything you need about city driving, Autobahn part, so about the different driving characteristics, cruising, and also the sporty side of that vehicle. We'll start here inside the city. About overview is okay to the rear. I mean, from the outside it doesn't look like we have a good overview, but it's fairly easy from the inside. The A-pillar is quite thick though, that is blocking a little bit of your view. What is nice when you look to the front, like in the Porsche 911, you can see the round shape above the headlights. That's something pretty unique when you're sitting here and look outside and see the hood. There's the GPS. Did I do any route? I'm not sure. Did I? Actually, I didn't. Cancel route. That's pretty easy, and you've seen I did not control it with the touchscreen now. I did use those buttons, and that's really good for when you're driving. You cannot reach out that far to the screen, and that distracts you. Then it's also good to have those buttons. You can easily reach, and also better to control while driving, because then you don't get shaken around in the touchscreen menu. So the overview to the rear is a little bit limited by the rear windows being a little bit shaded. You've seen it on the outside as well, but overall it's quite okay still from the overview. The main thing is here that you have a cozy living room feeling. You don't feel that you would have too much space because we have a sporty cockpit layout. As I've told you earlier, it feels like a sports car that was put a little higher indeed, and that has this 370X platform background, for example. And being a cozy car, that also means cruising is no problem. I can also show you the cruise control best on the Autobahn, for example. And it's also relatively silent in here. So overall a good result as for the noise insulation. So this car gives you a high premium feeling, and what is interesting really that we've talked to a lot of customers of this car. Sorry. Yeah, that's still the old stuff. I mean, I really like naturally aspirated engines. You know, I'm really also a fan of electric cars meanwhile, and I don't think that a car must have a growling sound anymore. When it's a petrol engine, okay, nice to have also a growling sound. Well, on the down part is that just in city driving, this engine consumes a lot of fuel. Oh, 17.5 liters. That's really a lot on 100 kilometers an hour. If you take more Autobahn driving into, so we did several tests. So if you're driving rather calmly and you have a lot of, what did I just say? So if you, yeah, we also want to show you some of the performance here today and give you some impressions of the sound. Please note that with the timestamp in it, like here, maybe 2017, driving rather calmly. I want to hear you that comment with the right timecode, of course. So back to the city driving. You see, when I'm not hammering the throttle, the car is really relatively silent. Also the engine, it gives you a great sovereignty with this huge displacement. But again, consumption very high inside the city. If you take more Autobahn driving, motorway into account, you can also score some 12 liters, 13 liters on 100 kilometers. But just city driving will be even higher. See, remember around 17, 18. Whew, that's one of the most fuel consuming cars we tested yet. The weight is about 2.2 tons. Yeah, that's still the old star. You need to have the money for the fuel then, of course. Not very good for your CO2, but those naturally aspirated engines don't create as much of those very fine particles, at least. That's, you know, on the other side. The very small turbo engines, which are really trimmed to the least amount of displacement but maximum horsepower output, they sometimes put out less CO2, but more of those very hazardous particles. So there are always two sides about it. Now going through some bumps, holes here, suspension does that very well. So you feel very comfortable in those seats together with the suspension and the good sound insulation. It is on the one hand a tank, on the other hand, because it's fairly easy to control, you feel also fine when driving in the city. You have to get used to it, that you have a rather bulky console here. Everything is rather a little bit narrow as they imitate a racing style cockpit. But other than that, there was a funny feeling. For example, we have a Fiat 500X at the same time, which is half the size. And still, for example, Katrina preferred to drive this one here because she felt this was easier to handle than the Fiat 500X. So very remarkable thing also when you sometimes compare cars which are totally out of league. Very interesting. To the downsides, I don't like the steering wheel at all. I told you earlier, it looks like the steering wheel from the 370Z from Nissan. The feeling is not that natural, not that direct. The shifting pedals are fixed, so sometimes you hit them when you, for example, turn back the steering wheel. You always have to keep the hands close to the steering wheel that you don't hit them, and it doesn't look that premium worthy as the rest of the car is. So I would like to have some more direct steering input there, that's for sure. In an earlier review we had the diesel, which was louder at a basic standard level of driving, and we also had a different suspension as far as I remember. This one here was slightly updated, and we also have these different driving modes available, so we want to tell you more about that as well. First of all, there's this snow mode, and when I put that one in, throttle input is more gently, so not so much power is distributed to the ground. In general, just to remember, permanent all-wheel drive with a rear wheel bias. So you have more torque over the rear wheels than over the front wheels. Classic permanent all-wheel drive stuff. And that also accounts for a rather sporty driving characteristic. The snow mode again decreases the throttle input, so you don't have too much power that the wheels don't spin, and also changes a little bit of the all-wheel drive distributions. And another thing you can change here is the sports suspension. So if you say this car is too soft for you from suspension, what is interesting, as we've driven the car for the very first time, I had rather the feeling it's a very soft suspension, it doesn't fit to the car. Here we have those 21-inch rims mounted, and they somehow fit to the car. I mean, visually, yes, and the suspension is not really rough, but I think it's sporty enough. So this car becomes rather sporty now, and I'm wondering if it's something with the update they did on the suspension, as it's, I think, about 2 years I've driven this car for the last time, or it's maybe even about the rims. You have those bigger rims and they give you a little bit more support and contact to the road. That might also be a reason. Now I really have the feeling it's not very soft when I'm going in the corner, for example. There's not too much tilting of the car. So it reminds me a little bit of driving a Porsche Cayenne indeed. When I, however, set the suspension mode to sport, then it gets relatively rough. So if you're doing some lane change, then you got good support as long as the road is very well done. But now, for example, bam, if you're going over those sewage tops from the sewage system, the covers, or in some other potholes like here, bam, that gets really rough. And for everyday driving, that's not really comfortable. So I would, for example, activate that option when you're on a motorway which is very well built and you want to drive faster, for example. But it's good to have it. So if there are some customers who still say the suspension is too soft for me, that might be the solution. Now going on the motorway, we'll leave a little bit of distance to the car in front of us that we can show you some acceleration. Then listen again to the engine and also acceleration. We will have like 60 to 100 now. Let's go. That was 60 to 110 or something. Wow. So performance is really there, and also sound-wise, wow. If I put the shifting stick to the left side, then we're also in the sport mode. That shifts down earlier and shifts up later. We can show you some 80 to 100 in the sport mode. Goes about 5, and now you hear it, shifts up later, stays in the lower gear. When I put it to the right side again, shifts up again, and the ride is calmer. So if you want to give it some more torque, you can also use this sport mode. Then cruise control, activated here on the steering wheel. Set it, and it also keeps the distance to the car in front of us. That is the run of road assistance, or lane keeping assist. When I'm touching the side part here of the white line, beep beep beep. No, Thomas, you Thomas, don't do that. It's really good to have this acoustic warning. Now cruise control sets in. I'm doing nothing. Decrease the speed. I can also set the distance. I can get it a little bit closer to the minimum distance, for example. That also works. And haven't seen it fail or something like that yet. So at the moment they're going very slow. That takes us another chance for the acceleration, 60 to 100, and now again in the sport mode. Wow. It's a really impressive sound. Good acceleration. Takes some time to shift down. What you can always do is use the shifting pedal as well, and then shift down on your own. 5, 4, 3, bam, 4, 3, 4. So you can have a lot of fun by that. Just put the stick to the right again, and you're in the automatic mode once again. So you can have fun with this car also in sporty driving. Good assistance systems are on board as well, and the good thing is, I've told you that in the interior part, you get a lot of those options already from the standard equipment or in the next higher trim level, whereas you have to pay a lot of money more with the German premium manufacturers as the competitors. So this is also one of the cars, you know, if you look at it at first and say, it's something different indeed, and you have to just use it a little bit, but it's one of the cars, the longer you drive it, the harder you want to let go. So it really conveys a very cozy feeling, and it's sporty also when you need it. So overall I have a very positive impression of the car. Sound insulation at 100 kilometers an hour is also perfectly fine here, so we can't moan about that. And also still good Autobahn characteristics. Some of the German competitors, they are a little bit stiffer from the suspension, not less comfortable, but they just figure out that suspension game for higher speeds a little bit better. That's just the case. You know, but it's not that I would feel not safe enough when I'm driving fast. I can also go back here, for example, again. Let's go here again with it shift manually. That's really sports car-like, isn't it? Really nice. Of course, consumption remains high, especially when we do such kind of tests. That's for sure. We don't have any side mirror warnings. That's missing, maybe. But we have the highest trim level, everything in it, which is available, basically. Also nice with those illuminations in the purple circles inside the screen. Now I set the cruise control once more and can just relax again. The seats offer you also a very good long-term comfort. And what else is remarkable? We have the front part of the windscreen. It is a little bit colored in blue, and that is against the sun. So most of the time you don't have to use a separate windshields blind. It's enough that you have this blue cover, and that's good because you can still have this basically free view, and sometimes just the sun is appearing right here in this region. Then we were totally fine with that. Now the adaptive cruise control, let's see, went quite fast behind that truck. That was an additional warning. I did not use the brake. Let's see if it also goes to 0. Let's hope it does it. No, obviously not. So I had to, that's really dangerous. I'll test it again at lower speed, but it seems like this cruise control would not go to 0. At least I had the feeling of it. We will test it again now in city traffic again when we're driving a little bit slower. But usually I think all ACC, I mean, either you should have a cruise control which goes like, I set the speed and that's it. And then no, that's exactly what the cruise control does. Or if you have this automatic cruise control, then you should really be certain that it also decreases the speed until 0. Let's see. We'll do it here again. Set it to 30. Okay, that's a traffic light now. We'll test it for sure again. But now, I mean, I had to stand by on the brakes, you know, because the ACC was coming quite close. I will also increase again the distance from the cruise control because I had the distance on the minimum level, and that was quite close. Another interesting key finding here. So I would not put the cruise control to the minimum distance level. That is really too close. It's too dangerous. And depending on the regulations of keeping distance in each market, most of the minimum distance one in Germany, for example, it wouldn't be enough from a police sense. So you usually need at least a second stage. So now a car is standing there, putting the cruise control to 50. I'm not braking, I'm just keeping standby. Come on, do it. What the fuck? See, that's not really working. So I was at 55 and the car did not reduce the speed at all. It really seems like that this ACC is rather thought for really just being in motorway ACC, and that's not good. I mean, now I set again the speed, and I've set the maximum distance. Let's see what the car does now. Well, it's giving too much distance. So I set it to the middle distance part now. But you know, that's not really... Also on the motorway, the ACC is perfectly fine, but it's not an ACC you can 100% trust like the ones we had from Volvo or Mercedes, or the latest, not the earlier, the latest Audi ones. Those ones are really perfectly fine. But here, pay attention, use it on the motorway to keep the distance, but don't trust on it to 0 kilometers. That's, I mean, it wouldn't be a problem because we don't have a manual transmission here. It's an automatic transmission, so that would perfectly work. Not sure what they thought of there. Here on Countryside Road, we can enjoy some of the nature here. And again, about the steering, you see in the lower speed regions, it's quite okay from the input. So if you have like the first degree angles, but you sometimes see when I had some sharper turns, they had to turn the steering wheel quite a lot around. So a more progressive output of the steering would have been a little nicer, definitely. Yeah, it's really strange that it always depends on the situation. So it's really funny that you feel just in those regions and it would be very direct, but as soon as you're going in a wider angle, it's not that direct anymore. So often you cannot say some general judgment about even certain elements of the car. really always depends on the driving situation. But you know, I'm just mentioning the different situations that you get the best impression of the car as possible. And due to the good sound installation and the very comfortable ride, when you're riding here about 50, just about or above 50 kilometers an hour, it feels like you would be standing still. High seating position, good view on the road, and I could very well imagine going a very, very long road trip now. I think Michelle would also not mind. Yeah, so all the way I go. So, thanks for joining us here in the driving part. And now to our conclusion for today. The Infiniti QX70 in the ultimate version. And I think after that one, the next review we do from this car will be an all-new generation. But so far, this is one of the cars where we got the best feedback from customers, really saying, I like it, I'm really satisfied with it. And it was really remarkable. On that last review, we really got a lot of comments about that. So feel free to prove that in the comments if you are a satisfied customer here. I think especially the ultimate version is really extraordinary from the exterior design. So it's maybe a love or hate car, and as I said earlier, I usually prefer cars that just consist of one or two design lines, Jaguar E-Type for example. But this one here, although the design is so joyful, I think it has something extraordinary, and therefore I also like it. They were daring to do such thing for the road. The interior is definitely outdated, no doubt about that, but basically on a good quality level. We have some parts which are not really fitting an Infiniti premium level, but you see, for example, with the new Infiniti Q30, they can do way better and even better than the Mercedes A-Class sibling. So in a new generation of that vehicle, this one will be hugely improved for sure. What is lacking are more alternatives to the seat surfaces, and if you maybe have a QX70 with Alcantara seats, please tell me, because I have just seen one picture and then never again. That would definitely be suitable for that car. The trunk with just about over 400 liters of capacity is too small. That should be improved definitely. And the package in the rear, well, is quite okay, not the best one. Driving, it is really a lot of fun. You have a sporty driving characteristics as well as a comfy ride. You have this sovereign ride. So it's a car you actually don't want to skip when you have it here for testing. So I really enjoyed that part here. Also, maybe if they update the steering wheel, that would be the most important thing for me then. Yeah, that's 3.7 liter V6, old school stuff. Great from the sound, but really too much consumption. I really have to work on that. So I think we've presented you a lot of pros and cons on the vehicle. Looking forward to your opinion on different aspects we've covered. And I'm pretty sure we'll see each other at our very next Autogefühl episode with Thomas or with one of my colleagues. Thank you very much for watching, guys.